Hey guys, welcome back to Ivy Rose Knows. So many people are talking about the autopsy report for Dee Dee Blanchard. When is it going to come out? They can't wait to see it, myself included. I'm not so much interested in seeing the autopsy report as I am Dee Dee's toxicology report at the time of her death. I can't wait to find out what's in there. I think that those results will tell us so much. But during the trial, his name is Thomas Vandeberg, chief investigator with the medical examiner's office. During this case, he testified at Nicholas Godejohns' trial. So I went back to Law and Crime and I pulled that little snippet of his testimony and I posted it here for you so you can have easy access to it. So here you go. Let me know what you think.
Not crucial. First, show you what has been marked as State's Exhibits 13 through 18. If you could just take a second and look at those. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
Those are photographs from the scene of Ms. Blanchard as she was found in her bed and then packaged in a body bag.
And do the images of Ms. Blanchard in those photographs fairly and accurately depict how she looked when you saw her?
Yes.
Then I'm going to show you what I have.
Are you going to have the witness describing the those who?
Yes. This is the outside front of Ms. Blanchard's residence with a vehicle parked from beside the bed of Ms. Blanchard.
And looking in State's Exhibit 14, is that blood basically that's kind of soaked there through her nightgown?
Yes, the back of the nightgown was saturated and was mostly dried at the time that I saw her.
And it looks like there then that pink sheet lower than that, and then ultimately the comforter also has some blood.
Yes.
Other than that, did you observe any kind of blood that flew onto the walls or anything like that?
Not that I observed. When I was there, it was early morning and we were in suboptimal lighting conditions.
And what is that called when blood kind of projects from the body?
Cast off. When an item is withdrawn that has blood on it, blood is cast off of that item. And blood spatter is the overall forensic field of looking at the blood evidence left at the scene.
Then flipping to State's Exhibit 15, what are we looking at?
That is the initial lifting the back of the nightgown to see some of the wounds on Ms. Blanchard's back.
State's Exhibit 16, flipping to the next page, what is that?
That is a large wound on the back of the neck. And you also have wounds on the right side of the neck that are visible in this picture also.
Then flipping to the next page, State's Exhibit 17, what is that?
That is after we were able to move Ms. Blanchard onto a body bag onto the other side of the bed to prepare for transporting her. The locking seal has been placed on the body bag and her name and the autopsy number were written on the back.
And then flipping to State's Exhibit 18, what are we looking at there?
That is a close-up of the locking seal that shows the individual number for that seal. Each seal has its own unique number.
And fair to say what we just looked at, exhibits 13 through 18 were all pictures that were taken at the scene.
Yes.
Now, going back for a moment to the autopsy, when it came time to inspect the body of Ms. Blanchard for injury,
Yes.
were you there personally present?
Yes, I was.
And did you personally observe each injury on the external part of her body?
Yes.
Did you personally observe what, if any, damage those external injuries caused to the inside of her body?
I did.
In general, what type of injuries did Ms. Blanchard have?
She had both stab wounds and incised or cutting wounds.
How many stab wounds did she have?
She had 17 stab wounds.
And how many incised wounds?
There were 2 large incised wounds, but they appeared to have been a series of cuts to cause those 2 large wounds.
Given I guess, which general part of her body were the stab wounds to?
The stab wounds were primarily over the upper back. There was 1 stab wound on the right side, and there was 1 stab wound just above the collarbone on the right side on the front, and 2 in the back of the head.
Now, of the wounds on the neck, you mentioned that there were both stab wounds and those incised wounds.
Yes.
Based on your training and experience, what causes an incised wound?
A sharp object drawn across in a cutting motion to cause a large cut injury.
If we flip to the next page, which is State's Exhibit 36, what are we looking at there?
That is the body bag at the autopsy, showing that the locking seal is still intact, and we have added the autopsy number, little scale. We put in all the photographs taken at autopsy.
Then if you flip the page, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 37?
That is the incised wound on the back of the neck to the left side of the page, and on the right side of the page is the large incised wound to the right side of the neck, which in this photograph there are several wounds that look like they run together into one large wound on the right side.
And specifically, kind of up there towards the top, that more circular wound, what type is that?
It appears that that was a stab wound, and there were 2 stab wounds to the back of the head, just right at the top of the neck.
And in your training and experience, would those be caused by a different mechanism than the incised wounds?
Well, a stabbing is a puncture going straight in or at an angle, but to just puncture the skin and hit whatever's underneath, as opposed to the cutting motion of a incised wound.
And then if you flip the page, State's Exhibit 38, what do we see in this picture?
In this picture, it shows the both wounds, the large incised wounds, but it also does show there is a stab wound behind the right ear, at the back of the head, just at the top of the neck, and then also the larger incised wound on the right side of the neck.
And then if we flip the page to State's Exhibit 39, what is this picture focusing on?
This shows multiple superficial wounds on the right side of the neck going down towards the shoulder, and it shows the clear forked tails in that large wound on the right that indicate it was several cutting motions for that wound. The other wounds on the right are very superficial, and just one peeled some superficial skin, and several of them are just scratches.
Now, in regard to the incised wound on the back of the neck, were you able to tell how deep that was?
That wound did go all the way into where it was in contact with the bone of the cervical spine, and it contacted that between the 6th and 7th cervical vertebrae.
And how about the depth of the incised wound on the side?
The wound on the right side also went down to the cervical spine until it contacted the bone.
If you flip to State's Exhibit 40, what is this a photograph of?
That is a photograph of Ms. Blanchard's back taken from the right side.
And there are numbers there. What do those signify?
Forget everything you've been
Parkey numbered each wound, and this shows the numbers 1 through 14 for the stab wounds on the back.
And of those 14 wounds there on the back, were there certain ones that caused significantly more damage than others?
Of these wounds, wound number 3, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 12, and number 14 penetrated into the chest cavity, and a couple of them on into the abdominal cavity of Ms. Blanchard.
And if you go ahead and flip to State's Exhibit 41, what is this exhibit?
This is a photograph that I initialed when I circled those 6 wounds that penetrated into the body cavities and damaged internal structures.
If we start with wound number 3, what was the internal damage caused on that one?
Wound number 3 went into the left side of the chest. It damaged the left lung, went into the pericardial sac, and then went into the left atrium of the heart.
And how about wound number 5?
Wound number 5 went into the left or the right side of the chest and damaged the the right lung, and I believe it may have also penetrated into through the diaphragm and into the liver.
And wound number 6?
Wound number 6 penetrated into the right side of the chest and into the right lung.
Number 7?
Wound number 7 penetrated into the right side of the chest and into the right lung.
Wound number 12?
Wound number 12 penetrated into the chest and into the right lung.
And lastly, number 14?
And number 14 penetrated into the chest, into the right lung, and then I believe it also went through the diaphragm into the liver.
If you go ahead and flip to the last page, State's Exhibit 42, can you describe this exhibit?
This is a copy of the Missouri death certificate for Claudine Blanchard.
And when are these issued?
These are issued after the certifying doctor has enough information to make the determination of the cause and manner of death.
And it says there next to date of death, June 14th of 2015.
Yes.
Is that meant as the actual date of her death?
No, that is actually the date found. When we don't know the specific day of the death, we put on the death certificate the date that the body is found.
And ultimately, what was the listed cause of death?
The cause of death is listed as stab wounds.
Like that moment, you're on.
Yeah.
question. I do. No further questions.
Anything, Mr. Frank?
Just briefly,
Sir?
my question would be, you can't tell us the order of these stabbings, is that correct?
That is correct.
You can't tell us the time frame that these stab wounds occur, is that correct?
The stab wounds would appear to be at the time of death. They were very closely within minutes of the time of death. And that certainly appeared to be more than 36 hours from the condition of the body, from the time I examined her early morning on June 15th.
Okay, you can't tell us the time frame as relation to the other injuries. In other words, they all occur in a very short period of time, in your opinion?
Yes, all appear to have occurred in a very short time.
And almost all of the injuries were on the back, at least all the stab wounds, correct?
Correct.
And there was one stab wound kind of on her, it looks like her right shoulder, kind of on the side or just barely in front.
Yes.
That would be consistent with maybe her lifting up and the process of the stabbing continuing, correct?
It could be that.
And then she had some injuries on her hand.
There was one incised wound on the ring finger of, I believe, the left hand.
And there were stab wounds and incised wounds, correct?
Correct.
And stab wounds would, as you demonstrated earlier, would be stabbing motion.
Yes.
And incised would be more of a slice or a cut.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned rigor mortis. When does that normally start after one passes away?
Rigor mortis starts to set in within several hours. It's determined by the temperature and activity at the time of death, how soon it really starts. But by 6 to 8 hours, rigor mortis is firm, and after 24 to 36 hours, rigor mortis passes away again.
Okay, and when you say passes away, tell us what that means.
The body is in the position, but when we move an extremity, it doesn't try to go back to that position. It's flaccid once we move.
And your best guess as to time of death would have been about 36 hours before she was found?
That was a minimum. It could have been longer than that.
That's all put by Judge.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness speak, excuse me.
Yes, on behalf of the city.
Mr. Perry?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Excuse, if you would take those exhibit folders and pass them down to the witness, please. I'm assuming you're not going to use them in the